No system, no golden finger farming text, power strategy text traveling through the end of the Han Dynasty, relying on the wisdom of leading for 1,000 years, expanding fields and refining troops. When the heroes were still conscripting soldiers, he had already trained countless elite soldiers. When other generals were still competing for a red rabbit horse, he had already formed tens of thousands of red rabbit horse legions. When the feudal lords were still worried about money and food, they were plundering the world. Step by step, pushing forward horizontally, there will be no more three kingdoms. Chapter 1. This young master has no card face. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. In the winter of the 4th year of Guanghe in the Eastern Han Dynasty, 181 AD, in Xiliang and Longxian. A young man with a sword eyebrow and bright eyes, and a jade-like face, knelt by the window and read. There are several charcoal pots of cigarettes curling up inside the house, warm as spring. The young man put down the bamboo slips and frowned as he looked out the window. The heavy snow danced gracefully in the north wind, falling into a world where every snowflake was guilty. The young man's name is Duan, a physics expert from the new century, who was knocked unconscious by the main beam of the ancestral temple falling off. I woke up and found that my soul had penetrated into the Eastern Han Dynasty, becoming the 14-year-old son of Duan, the governor of Liangzhou. Mother Ju, elder brother Duan Bo is the governor of Yumen. Duan threw the book aside in frustration, stood up, and pounded his numb legs. In the original history, his father Duan Yong died from drinking poison in 179, but now he has not died and is still the governor of Liangzhou. This has made him quite anxious, not sure if the historical trend has changed. There is no phone, no food, no entertainment, he can only rely on reading to relieve himself. What's even more terrifying is that in just over 2 years, there may be a Yellow Turban uprising, which is a truly chaotic era. How can I survive in this chaotic world? While Duan was still feeling guilty, there was a knocking outside the door. Young master, it's me, Chair. Duan thoughts were interrupted, he put down the bamboo slips and loudly called for the other party to come in. A sturdy servant pushed the door in, and the cold wind desperately squeezed into the room. Duan couldn't help but shiver, and the servant quickly closed the door. Duan saw that it was his servant Hu Chair. Hu Chair said to Duan, "Second young master, didn't you say you were going to our restaurant today?" Duan finally realized that his old father had asked him to manage the family business. "Today, let's go to the tavern first." When the two walked to the courtyard, a black vicious dog suddenly rushed towards Duan, with sharp teeth about to bite him. Hu Chair immediately stood in front of Duan, and the vicious dog immediately bit Hu Chair's arm. Hu Chair hastily kicked the vicious dog in the stomach. It let out a howl. The evil dog rolled a long way, curled up on the ground, and even bared its teeth and growled at the two of them. Duan quickly checked Hu Chair and saw that only his clothes were torn. Seeing that Hu Chair was fine, I finally felt at ease and my heart was filled with anger. Hu Chair looked at her torn clothes with heartache, tears streaming from her anger. The butler arrived with his servants and apologized perfunctorily to Duan. "I'm late, this is a fighting dog raised by Dalong. Just now, it bit off the rope and unexpectedly collided with Erlang." The servants all reluctantly rushed over, and Duan looked at the lazy posture of everyone, secretly cursing his predecessor for being incompetent. Duan ignored the butler and glanced at the vicious dog before calmly saying, "This is the first time." The butler's face immediately changed, and his originally smiling face had become gloomy. The butler's nephew Anfu immediately stood up and said casually, "Second young master, what's going on now? You're still angry with a beast, and you're not afraid of being laughed at by others." Duan didn't even glance at them and went straight back to his room. "What are you pretending to be? If you are ignorant all day, you will know how to spend money recklessly." The old man asked him to take care of his family business, but as a result, both the cloth shop and the grain shop closed down, leaving only a liquor store that was about to close down. He even shook his face with us. Anfu saw Duan Yu leave, and then his gloomy face whispered at him. A few servants also looked disdainfully at Duan Yu's back. They used to know that you were timid, but now they have started to learn how to act like a calf. Listening to Nguye's words again, the few of them also chuckled. The butler saw what his nephew wanted to say and immediately interrupted him. Don't discuss the Lord's family affairs recklessly. My nephew wanted to say a few more words, but as soon as he saw my uncle's face not looking good, he immediately stopped talking. Duan Yu found a cotton jacket and a long sword and handed them to Hu Cheer. Hu Cheer wanted to evade, but when he saw Duan Yu's sincere gaze, he immediately changed. He carried his long sword around his waist, with a happy expression on his face. And Duan Yu took another sword and placed it around his waist. The two of them rushed towards their own tavern. When the two of them walked to the tavern, they saw that their doorstep was cold and deserted. Only a few children are hiding under the eaves in the snow. The restaurant across from me was bustling with people coming in and out, filled with high and bustling guests. Duan Yu saw a servant walking out of his own tavern, holding food for several children. The children gathered together and immediately shared the food, with a happy expression on their faces. Just when the servant saw Duan Yu and Hu Cheer looking over here, he frowned and walked up to Duan Yu, calmly explaining. I saw a few children pitifully, so I gave them the leftover food. Duan Yu listened for a moment, but he didn't expect his servant to speak so calmly. The children were afraid that Duan Yu would make things difficult for the servant, so they quickly knelt in front of Duan Yu. Please forgive us, we are homeless and have no way to survive. Brother Qingongying saw our pitiful situation and gave us some leftover food. Duan Yu looked at several children, all with messy hair and dirty faces. The tattered clothes couldn't wrap around his trembling body, and his hopeful eyes were fixed on him. Duan Yu just smiled and nodded at the child, then said to Qingongying, Ah-ing, please settle these children in the store. Qingongying's face lit up with joy as he wanted several children to thank Duan Yu. Duan Yu waved his hand and walked straight into the tavern. The room was clean and warm, but there were only a few tables of diners. The shopkeeper saw Duan Yu enter and immediately welcomed him, saying, Second young master, I have really worked hard. But the wine shop across from me is owned by the Geng family. Those literati and scholars are willing to come to their side, and even if it's cheap, it's not easy for us to use it. You know, those scholars are not very close to me. Duan Yu thinks this shopkeeper can talk, are we not close to them? When my father was serving as the colonel of Xiliang, he captured thousands of young scholars, and he hated them deeply. Duan Yu just nodded and couldn't help but frown as he looked at the deserted tavern. How could my Duan family's business be so light? All customers who come to the store to consume today are free. The diners who were eating next to them all looked delighted when they heard Duan Yu's words. Duan Erlang is atmospheric. Many diners shouted again, Shopkeeper, give us another 5 pounds of lamb. Several other diners also requested additional dishes, and several diners also bowed their hands to thank Duan Yu. The tavern suddenly became angry, except for the shopkeeper's unpleasant expression. Duan Yu waved his hand to the crowd, his face calm and indifferent. The shopkeeper looked at Duan Yu and he was really drunk. He came again. Your cloth and grain shops were also ruined like this back then. Those shopkeepers couldn't help but tremble when they saw you coming to the store. You are truly an ancestor. I just saw Duan Yu frown and the shopkeeper didn't say much anymore. Qingongying brought several trembling children into the house and told the shopkeeper that Shao would ask these children to help in the store. The shopkeeper's face turned even paler after listening. You go get some spices, I'll be of great use. After listening to Duan Yu's words, the shopkeeper felt the fields in his hometown waving to him. He didn't want to say much, so he went outside to handle it. Only then did Duan Yu have time to measure Qingongying, who was 7 feet tall and had bright eyes. Even the attire of his servants could not resist his refined demeanor. Aying, can you read? Qingongying changed slightly and then calmly said, I don't have much literacy, so I've only seen a few bamboo slips left by second young master here. Duan Yu looked at Qingongying with a slightly evasive expression in his eyes, wondering if there was any hidden meaning, so he didn't ask much. Teach these children how to read. The store is not busy these days. Follow me back to Duanfu, and I have developed 2 tools that can bring our store back to life. You can help me keep an eye on those craftsmen. After teaching the children how to read, Qingongying nodded, but the next words left him speechless as he looked at Duan Yu. Are these 2 young people truly throwing things around? Just relying on your intelligence to invent, your old Duan family's wealth will make you lose out. Duan Yu doesn't care about the way these people look at him, he already has a general understanding of the restaurant. I must seize the time to revitalize this tavern myself. Immediately, with Hu Chaer, Qingongying rushed back to the Duan mansion. Chapter 2. Starting with Liwei, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Duan Yu and a few people had just entered the Duan mansion when the vicious dog tied at the door immediately roared at him, with fresh flesh and blood still remaining on the corner of his mouth. The vicious dog was full of hostility towards Duan Yu, and it grabbed a chain and rushed towards him. That fierce appearance, determined to tear Duan Yu apart. Duan Yu drew his long sword and stabbed it directly into the dog's throat. The second time. Duan Yu's light and flowing 3 words made everyone shiver uncontrollably. Isn't it too much of a problem? Why did you hit hard the second time? Everyone looked at the convulsing dog, with blood constantly oozing from its neck and its mouth still sobbing softly. Seeing the cold gaze of Air Shao again, everyone couldn't help but shiver. The butler and his nephew Anfu originally wanted to see a joke, but Duan Yu suddenly hit hard, making them completely unresponsive and stunned on the spot. The butler looked at the cold-faced second young man with a heavy gaze. This swift action, with a deadly and ruthless blow, made the butler take it lightly. Anfu immediately spoke loudly, Second young master, why did you make such a fierce move? This is the young master's beloved dog. You can wait for the young master to find you. Duan Yu held a sword and wiped the blood off the evil dog's body, then inserted the sword into its sheath before turning his head and looking at Anfu with a cold gaze. The butler quickly stopped Anfu, who wanted to speak again, and immediately said to Duan Yu, I will arrange for someone to bury this vicious dog immediately. Duan Yu nodded and then said to the butler, find me a few craftsmen, I'll be of great use. The butler had not spoken yet, but Anfu interjected somewhat out of place. Air Shao, why are you messing around? You've ruined so many stores. It's been a long time since we've received any benefits, brother. If you continue to do this, we'll have to drink thin soup. Just Anfu's words this time, everyone below did not agree, and everyone looked at the convulsing vicious dog. Duan Yu turned his head to look at Anfu. His eyes were like ice in the deep winter, and he glanced at him and whispered, this is the first time. Everyone couldn't help but shudder. Anfu wanted to defend himself but was immediately stopped by the butler. And he looked at him with stern eyes, and he immediately shut up. The butler smiled and said to Duan Yu, I'll arrange for the second young master now. Qingongying just looked calmly, with a hint of brilliance in his eyes. These 2 young men are so decisive in their actions. Is his mischief outside just a disguise? When everyone saw Duan Yu leave, they breathed a sigh of relief and glanced at the vicious dog. They thought it would be better not to provoke the second young master in the future. Uncle, since second young master took over my position, only 1 liquor store outside has been ruined. Now that it's still so mischievous, why doesn't uncle stop first and second young master? Do you really see Duan Gong's family business ruined? The butler immediately became serious when he heard Anfu's nonsense. You are also here to question the master's matter, and in the future, show more respect to the second young master. We second young master are not someone who can be easily bullied. Anfu agreed verbally, but felt disdainful in his heart, so he dared to pretend to be a person in front of the dog. Humph, When he also destroys the tavern, he can still be so arrogant. The butler shook his head and sighed as he looked at his nephew's obedient expression. Continuing to report this matter to Duke Duan was greatly surprised upon hearing it. I didn't see how decisive this Erlang was in his actions, so he smiled and nodded. Follow Erlang's instructions. Then Duan Gong waved his hand and the butler went down to arrange. Duan Yu returned to the study and directly took out the cloth, drawing the design of the stone mill and wine steaming equipment on it. Qin Gongying felt a tug at his heart as he looked at it. This second young man is a waste. Can't you draw a smaller picture, second young man? This is all money. Several craftsmen arrived, and Duan Yu took out the drawn design and explained to them how to do it. The craftsman was stunned when Duan Yu took out the design drawing from the cloth. This useless thing, why don't you paint it for us on the ground? What a waste. In the past few days, Duan Yu has been leading the craftsmen to make these two devices. The stone mill is quite simple, and it was successfully crafted in just one day. The wine steamer is a bit troublesome, but it won't take long to succeed. Duan Yu asked Hu Chair to bring wheat and put it on the stone mill, asking him to push it. A few people immediately smiled bitterly. Shao, this stone mill weighs hundreds of pounds, isn't it a difficult car for you? Hu Chair didn't think too much, so he came up and pushed the stone mill. Under Hu Chair's push, the stone mill kept rotating, and the flour slowly came out. Everyone looked in surprise, except for Qin Gongying, who deftly held the bag and said, "This fine flour has been spilled on the ground, wasted." Everyone looked at Duan Yu in agreement, but there was still something inside the two young men's stomachs. Duan Yu arranged for someone else to grind the noodles and asked the craftsmen to make more than 10 such stone mills. At the same time, he said seriously to them, "Don't say anything about this exquisite production." When everyone heard about the killing of the dog by the second young master, they quickly promised to keep their mouths shut. I also instructed the craftsman who made the wine steamer, and seeing everything going smoothly, I took Hu Chair and Qin Gongying out for a walk. Duan Yu strolled freely on the street and couldn't help but walk out of the city gate. He only saw a group of refugees without covering their clothes discussing with the city gate guards to enter the city, but the guards only looked at them coldly. More refugees are setting up makeshift shelters by the city walls. As Duan Yu approached, he saw a group of people covered in dirt lying in the shack, trembling and trembling. Even the children were howling and the adults ignored them. When the refugees discovered Duan Yu and his group, they immediately surrounded them and knelt on the ground. "Please give us some food, we can sell the child to you, just ask for some copper coins from the benefactor." Duan Yu has never seen such a scene before, he has only read about the tragedy of refugees in history books. Can you really see these groups of empty eyes, those trembling bodies, and those covered in dirt? Only then did I know what it means to have a precarious day and a person like a mayfly. Duan Yu asked Hu Chair to distribute all his money to these refugees, and the city gate was immediately blocked. Duan Yu is still facing the scattered wealth boy. A horseman walked out of the city gate, followed by dozens of strong men. Seeing that the city gate was blocked, I just frowned. The servants understood and immediately drove away the people at the gate with sticks. These evil slaves were still shouting loudly, "Young Master Geng Lai of the Geng family is out of the city hunting." Even the lowly people dare to block the way, they really don't know whether to live or die. The people were beaten with blood flowing everywhere, crying and scattering. A few elderly people who didn't have time to escape were punched and kicked by several evil slaves, who were still cursing fiercely in their mouths. Duan Yu squinted his eyes as these evil slaves rushed towards him, his eyes flashing with anger. When the evil slave was preparing to drive away Duan Yu and others, he saw Duan Yu and Hu Chair wearing long swords. And Duan Yu, dressed as a scholar, only surrounded him and dared not move forward. Later, Geng Lai heard that a scholar was blocking the way ahead. He dismounted and came over, but he looked even more disdainful at Duan Yu. "It turns out that Erlang is here. How could he still have leisure to care about these lowly people? Your store's business is neglected. As he spoke, he patted his head again and continued, look at my brain. It seems like there's only one tavern left in your Duan family, and they're going to die. Haha. Qin Gongying saw Geng Li and a flash of anger flashed through his eyes, then he just silently looked at the other person. I'm not here to relax, why do I always come across these vicious dogs? I was annoyed and killed a few days ago, but I have to spend some time today. Geng Li immediately became furious and said, Duan Erlang, why don't you pretend to be with me here? It's because you think you, Wang, are the governor of Liangzhou and are here to show off your power. It's important to note that the sun shines on you. You don't have to worry about it, Geng Dalong. At least we're still in the sky, and your family is already at sunset. Humph, if I don't see you like a kid, let's go. After Geng Li finished speaking, he left angrily, his eyes showing even more hatred. Duan Yu watched as the Geng family left, feeling pity for the group of hungry people, and then shouted loudly. I liked to eat noodles when I was young, and they both come with me to the Duan family to make refined noodles. Geng Li couldn't help but sneer as he listened to Duan Yu's words. Humph, beyond my means, I'll wait for you to bring down the Duan family. Chapter 3. Your sword is not sharp enough. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The eyes of those refugees who were originally numb suddenly widened upon hearing Duan Yu's words, and hope appeared in their eyes. Qin Gongying looked at the operation of this piece of work, lost in thought, and his eyes occasionally flashed with light. When Duan Yu and thousands of refugees flooded into the Duan family, everyone in the Duan family was shocked to see the scene. Some servants quickly asked Hu Chair what was going on. Xiao said he likes to eat refined noodles and asked these people to make them. Everyone was stunned after listening, these two young cows. Does the Duan family's family business make you so corrupt, doesn't your conscience hurt? The butler and his nephew Anfu rushed over immediately, and Anfu sent someone to directly stop the crowd and rushed to Duan Yu's front. Xiao, why don't you ask the next section of the public? The second time, said Duan Yu calmly to Anfu. The servants thought of the dead dog and shuddered, but it was the second time they had killed the dog. Why didn't they kill it this time? Still with that bully and cowardly nature, I almost got fooled by you. The butler heard Duan Yu's words and his face changed greatly. He immediately stopped Anfu and gave him a stern look as a signal. Then he smiled and said to Duan Yu, I'll settle these people now, but I have to report to the master later. After all, this is not a small matter. Duan Yu stared at Anfu for a moment, then said to the butler, take out these strong men and let them use mortar to make fine noodles. In the Han Dynasty, there was no stone mill, so we could only use mortar to strike, which was time-consuming and laborious. Duan Yu returned to the workshop with Qin Gongying and Hu Chair to inspect the production of wine steaming equipment and stone mills. The butler settled these refugees and then reported this to Duke Duan. Upon hearing these words, Duan Gong sighed leisurely, the people's livelihood is very difficult. It's not easy for Erlang to understand the suffering of the people. Everything should be done according to Erlang's instructions. The butler looked at Duke Duan in surprise and wanted to say that our Duan family is not particularly wealthy either. The butler resigned and began arranging for these refugees to work. It is rumored throughout Longxian that Duan Jiar Lang has fallen ill again and used thousands of refugees to make him refined noodles, causing everyone to sigh. This Duke Duan is so talented, but these two sons are just playboys. Old Duke Duan's family business is probably going to ruin Duan Yu. Duan Yu brought in more craftsmen from the mansion and asked them to assemble the various components of the stone mill on the assembly line. As each stone mill came out, Duan Yu kept pulling out hard-working people from the refugees to grind the surface with a stone mill. Duan Yu is still busy checking the grinding situation, and Qin Gongying reports to Duan Yu. Deputy Butler Anfu is whipping some refugees. Duan Yu frowned and rushed over with Hu Chair and Qin Gongying. He saw Anfu constantly whipping several elderly people with a whip. The young child next to him rushed up to block the old man and was also whipped by Anfu with a whip. He was beating while still showing a look of enjoyment on his face. Duan Yu walked steadily, and the servant pulled Anfu to signal that the second young master was coming. But Anfu still hit the child again before coming over with his head raised. Duan Yu asked with a serious expression, "What's going on?" Anfu said disdainfully, "A few old and weak men, they can't do much work and still dislike poor food." Several elderly people immediately knelt down in front of Duan Yu, shouting loudly, "Young master, the little old man is working. But I can live by giving only a bowl of porridge a day, but how can my poor grandson live? Please give me more bowls of congee so that my grandson can live." Anfu initially thought that Duan Yu had said it a second time without touching himself, but now he is even more reckless. Shao, our family doesn't have much food reserves. These lowly people waste our Duan family's food like this without working, so I'll teach them a lesson. Duan Yu immediately smiled, but his eyes were a bit cold. How many of them will ask you for more congee? Are you just kicking and punching? The members of the Duan family saw Duan Yu smile and thought that these two young people would also say, for the first and second time, they only know how to kill dogs and dare not kill anyone. I also feel disdainful in my heart. I wonder if it wasn't you who caused this mess. Are we so busy these days? No need for harsh measures, these people don't know the dignity of the Duan family. I'm here to help the second young master reduce trouble and make the Duan family prosper. Duan Yu didn't expect Anfu to shamelessly say these words, so he shook his head first. He quickly drew his long sword and stabbed it into Anfu's chest, his eyes showing a chill. The butler heard that Anfu's face changed greatly when he whipped the refugees, so he hurriedly came here. But as he was about to arrive, he saw Duan Yu quickly pull out his long sword and stab Anfu's heart directly. He wanted to shout to stop, but Duan Yu's movements were too fast. The third time, said Duan Yu softly. The servants were suppressed by Duan Yutu's fierce hand, and the thought of Duan Yutu's smile just now made their scalp tingle. They never imagined that second young master would kill anyone if he said so. They were all afraid, and they didn't know when second young master would pull out his sharp sword again. Anfu looked at the short sword on his chest in disbelief. He never expected Duan Yu to pounce on the assassin. I am the butler's nephew, why do you just say kill it? Are you always pretending to be weak like that? His eyes were only filled with fear, and in the end, his expression slowly faded away. The butler pounced on his nephew and looked at him spitting blood in his mouth. He was unusually regretful and burst into tears. I only have you as a male child when I settle down. I only have 2 daughters, and my uncle has been treating you like his own. But this has also spoiled you. It was my uncle who caused you to die. At this moment, Duke Duan also heard about this matter, and he and Lady Ju hurried over. When he saw the butler pouting in front of his nephew and crying bitterly, his eyes were filled with relief. Madame Ju watched the scene and immediately looked anxiously at her young son. Duan Gong walked over and found a confidant to temporarily take charge of the affairs of the refugees. Then he called Duan Yu and the butler to his study, and calmly asked the butler about what had happened. The butler felt as if he had lost his soul at this moment, but Duan Gong's questioning also boosted his spirits and explained the whole story to Duan Gong. Duan Gong looked at his young son and saw that Duan Yu's face was very calm. Just those slightly trembling hands made him see the boy's fear of killing for the first time. Duan Gong nodded and looked at Duan Yu with a surprised look from time to time. Then he asked, how does Stewardon think this matter should be resolved? Anfu's death deserves more than he deserves. Second young master has given him several opportunities, which can be considered as the end of benevolence and righteousness. Duan Gong pondered for a moment, looked at the respectful butler, and nodded lightly. The dead are gone, but the living are still important. Take care of your 2 daughters more. After Duan Gong finished speaking, he immediately waved his hand to let the butler leave. After the butler resigned, Duke Duan looked at his young son with a serious expression. Your sword is not sharp enough, it took so many years to dare to pick it up. In the future, pay attention to when my Duan family will act like you are timid and hesitant, as your family's industry is being hit by others and you dare not take action. Duan Yu immediately bowed respectfully and said, No. Duan Gong waved his hand wearily, and Duan Yu immediately left. After Duan Yu returned, he immediately went to the workshop, and the craftsmen immediately looked respectfully at Shao, with awe in their eyes. Immediately introduced to Duan Yu that the parts of the wine steaming equipment are almost ready and will be ready in the next 2 days. Duan Yu didn't pay attention to anything else, he just worked closely with the craftsmen to make the parts, and after 2 days, the wine steaming equipment was finally assembled. Duan Yu's face finally shows a smile. After several days of hard work, it depends on whether the equipment is awesome. Chapter 4. You are the biggest commoner of the Duan family. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Duan Yu immediately asked Hu Chair to go to the wine cellar to pick up the wine, and Hu Chair asked Duan Yu in a daze. Shao, take the good wine or the average one? Duan Yu looked at Hu Chair helplessly, feeling that his subordinates were truly unreliable. Chair, of course I'll take the best one. Hu Chair listened to Duan Yu's order and immediately went to fetch the wine. Qing Gongying's eyes twitched when he heard this, but he still bravely advised Duan Yu. Second young master, let's try ordinary wine first. If it's not good, we can still improve it a bit and save money. Duan Yu's eyes were full of confidence, and as he looked at the newly recruited talent, he couldn't help but speak earnestly to Qing Gongying. Ying, your situation is too small. What can a few jars of fine wine be considered? In the future, I will let you know what it means to be a wine pond and a meat forest. Qing Gongying stared blankly at Duan Yu and said, Second young master, how many dishes did you order? You're so drunk. The situation is still small, brother. With your current situation, the property of the old Duan family can still last for a few years. There's no need for the wine pond and meat forest. Can you make me eat meat every day? I'll sell this over 100 pounds to your Duan family. Forget it, anyway, I'm planning to leave the Duan family in the next few days. Let these 2 young men act around. In the past few days, Duke Duan has also received a report from the butler, stating that the second prince has developed 2 powerful tools that can revive the business of the Duan family. It is also said that the Duan family has thousands of new employees who consume a huge amount of food every day, and they even make new people eat noodles. This second person used to know how to spend money, but now he is happy to be able to work diligently for Duke Duan. But when he heard that he wanted his own precious wine for several years again, Duke Duan's eyes twitched. This child, I almost got it. You have caused me a lot of trouble over the years, especially when it comes to your family's property. My wealth has rapidly decreased. Now you're taking my fine wine again. Do you know how expensive it is? You despicable bastard, take a jar of lonely wine made of hardware. Old Duke Duan can't sit still. If this child continues to cause trouble, I won't be able to withstand even if my family has a fortune. Qing Gongying watched as Duan Yu asked the craftsman to pour the fine wine into the furnace, his heart dripping with blood. This despicable thing. If it were my seed, I would kill you. Isn't this wine fragrant to him? You must cause trouble. He really doesn't understand the life of the nobility. When Duan Gong walked into the room and saw that his 5 jars of fine wine had already been opened, he quickly stepped forward to check and found them all empty. He pointed at Duan Yu with trembling hands, his beard trembling. You're a spendthrift. Do you know how difficult it is for me to keep these few jars of fine wine? You're just causing trouble with my fine wine like this, and I'll beat you to death. After Duan Gong finished speaking, he was about to hit Duan Yu, but the butler immediately grabbed him. Master, not at all. Just a few jars of fine wine. Duan Yu stared at his father and shouted loudly. "Ah wine, why is this so small? How come your layout is so small? This is brewing immortal wine for you. After drinking it, you will know that those are all common things." Duan Gong hesitated for a moment, then became furious. "Stewardin, please make way for me. I'll beat this spendthrift to death. You're the biggest commoner in my family. This family business is ruined by you." It's not surprising that Duke Duan is so angry. For a good drinker, this debauchery of wine is like killing them. Besides, these few jars of wine are solitary wine. Drinking one jar will result in one less jar. Duan Gong only has these 5 jars left and has never been willing to drink them. This Hu Chaer is also practical. Let him take the best, he really takes the best, and he also takes Gujiu. Duan Gongzheng was about to smoke Duan Yu when he suddenly smelled the strong aroma of alcohol and immediately stopped cursing. Then he gestured to Duan Yu with his eyes. Duan Yu immediately took the bowl, opened the cone, and then a bowl of wine flowed out of the pipe, quickly blocking the mouth. Duan Gong saw that the bowl that Duan Yu had picked up spilled a lot of wine, and looked at Duan Yu with pain. He immediately went over and snatched the bowl. Then he carefully looked at the crystal clear liquid, smelled the strong aroma of wine emanating from the bowl, and greedily looked at the bowl of agarose jade liquid. Duan Gong lifted the bowl and drank it all in one gulp, but it was too late for Duan Yu to stop him. I saw Duan Gong's face quickly turn red, his eyes suddenly open, and then he became intoxicated again. Everyone looked at Duan Gong with concern, and after waiting for a while, Duan Gong shouted loudly. "What a strong wine, what a mellow wine, what a strong wine." Duan Gong's eyes were a bit blurred, and he then vigorously patted Duan Yu's shoulder, saying with a smile. "Erlang, you did a good job this time." Then he turned around and walked out leisurely, and the butler immediately supported Duan Gong as he walked out. Everyone stared blankly at Duan Gong as he left. When Duan Gong's back disappeared, they quickly stared at the pipe. It was really so good. Duan Yu brought the bowl again, took half a bowl of wine, smelled the taste of the wine, and then took a small sip. "The taste is decent, but I furrowed my brows again, it's just over 30 degrees, and the craftsmanship is still not good." Everyone stared straight at Duan Yu, showing greedy smiles. Duan Yu handed the bowl to Qin Gongying and said, "Let's drink a little alone. I estimate we can only produce 2 jars of wine at most." Qin Gongying took it over and just took a light sip, feeling very spicy. Then I swallowed it down my throat, and it burned down my stomach. My mouth was filled with the aroma of wine, and my whole body was feverish. Qin Gongying greedily took another sip and held the wine bowl with a drunken expression on his face. A few people were glaring at him angrily, and the second young master asked you to distribute it to everyone. What are your intentions? You were intoxicated all over there. We are waiting very anxiously, do you know? As Qin Gongying was about to take a third sip, everyone's faces immediately changed and they stared at him with murderous eyes. Qin Gongying finally realized and smiled awkwardly. Then he handed the bowl to Hu Chaer, who took half of it in one gulp. Both craftsmen turned red and their eyes spewed with anger. Hu Chaer was still intoxicated when he was kicked by Qin Gongying, which made him realize. Immediately handed it awkwardly to the 2 craftsmen, each intoxicated while drinking. Qin Gongying and Hu Chaer could only watch dryly. Duan Yu looked at the few people disdainfully and casually said. Look at your achievements, there will be plenty of wine like this in the future. Hurry up and put this wine in a jar. Chaer, go and fetch some more wine, and we will continue to brew. Duan Yu started studying this instrument again and improved several areas that were prone to air leakage. With continuous improvement, he finally achieved a score of 70 degrees. When Duan Yu returned to his own tavern, the shopkeeper's legs trembled and he dared not say that business was not doing well. Duan Yu immediately picked out the usable spices from the shopkeeper's collection and used a large pot to cook lamb stewed noodles. After tasting it myself, I was very happy and immediately excitedly told the shopkeeper. Send a bowl of lamb stewed noodles to each table, let them know what kind of food Duan Yu likes. The shopkeeper could only smile wryly, and Qin felt sorry as he looked at it. Then, the diners at each table thanked the two young masters one after another. Duan Yu still waved his hand calmly. Chapter 5. Murder Without Blood. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Duan Yu arranged for Geng to spread information, saying that the Duan family has strong liquor that only heroes can drink. Each jar is worth 10 gold, and if you can drink 3 jars without any problems, you will be rewarded with 1,000 gold coins. The shopkeeper was frightened by Duan Yu's operation, and Qin eyes flickered before going out to arrange. The diner ate this bowl of noodles and immediately knew what was delicious, and after finishing, they ordered another bowl. Duan Yu was overjoyed and shouted, "If you share the same interests as me, give them half the price." The diners cheered loudly, and sweat oozed from the shopkeeper's head. Duan Yu still had the same calm smile. In the following days, the business of Duan's tavern suddenly became prosperous, with some wanting to eat stewed noodles and others wanting to try this Xiliang liquor. Duan Yu looked at the shopkeeper with a smile. The shopkeeper was truly respectful to Duan Yu at this moment, but he was still vaguely worried, afraid that Heir Xiao Yi would be happy and start free again. On that day, Duan Yu saw a group of diners in the store, including a girl in plain clothes with black hair, who had not yet reached her hairpin. She has a stunning and soul-stirring beauty, but unfortunately, a large black mole on her face has destroyed her entire beauty. As if the heavens were also jealous of her stunning beauty, they put a black mole on her face. When people around saw this young girl, they were first amazed, but when they saw the black mole, they were immediately disappointed and looked down upon, moving away from the girl. Duan Yu was still admiring the beauty when suddenly a group of big men rushed into the tavern, pushing everyone in the way aside. Then, a young man dressed as a scholar emerged in large numbers. Upon seeing Geng, Duan Yu immediately lost the desire to appreciate beautiful women. Geng walked directly towards Duan Yu and shouted loudly, "It said that the Duan family has strong liquor. With dozens of massive people, I'm challenging this $1,000 lottery. Would Xiliang dare to take it?" Duan Yu immediately smiled and said, "You don't want to inquire. My Duan family has always kept their promises. Since they have said everything, when have they ever regretted it?" Numerous diners eating at the Duan family cheered and shouted that the Duan family was afraid of those few lucky draws. At this moment, the black mole girl and her brother were also attracted by the excitement here and looked at them. Geng and his servants knelt down and shouted, "Shopkeeper, quickly serve the wine. Today, I, Geng, will teach you a lesson about the vast amount of heroes in Liangzhou." Duan Yu just shook his head. Everyone was confused, and Geng said, "The Duan family can't show any good luck anymore. They dare not let us drink." Duan Yu looked contemptuously at Geng and said, "I'm afraid you're all drunk. Who's going to pay for the alcohol?" Geng immediately burst into laughter and asked the servants to bring in 1,000 pounds of brass. He then said to Duan Yu, "Duan Erlang, are these enough?" The people next to them were shocked as they watched the precious metal. The boxes of brass made everyone's eyes blink. Duan Yu looked at his empty expression, deliberately disdainful, and said to Geng, "Even your Geng family can only drink that ordinary burning knife, 1,000 gold is barely enough. You can't afford the real hero's tears, let alone the lottery." Everyone next to them took a deep breath, as there is still such a high-priced wine in the world. Geng face suddenly changed and he continued loudly, "Are you robbing the Duan family? Qian can only drink ordinary wine." The onlookers also nodded and murmured, "The wine from this family is immortal and cannot be brewed at such a high price." Duan Yu looked at Geng with a disdainful expression on his face, wanting to turn around and walk away, but was stopped by Geng. Duan Yu looked at Geng disdainfully and then slowly said, "Hero's tears, as the name suggests. This wine is not suitable for those who have a broad mind. This wine is very strong, even more ruthless than a burning knife. This wine is very mellow, and it is rare to have such a pure taste in the world. This wine has a long aftertaste, with a lingering fragrance lingering in the mouth. As everyone listened to Duan Yu's evaluation of Hero's Tears, they couldn't help but want to try the unique wine in this world. The elder brother of the girl with black mole listened to Duan Yu's description of the fine wine, his eyes shining brightly, and his heart tingling. Duan Yu looked serious and said solemnly, "Such rare immortal wine is sold by our Duan family for thousands of dollars. And because the production is too small, we can only limit our purchases. Do you think $1,000 is enough to win the lottery? It's better to drink ordinary burning knives. If you don't have money, don't make a fool of yourself, otherwise it's difficult for everyone to do it." The onlookers also looked at Geng Li with disdain, and some even exclaimed loudly, "That's right, you don't have the money to pretend to be a wealthy person. Just drink ordinary wine." Geng Li's face immediately turned ugly, but he still said with a firm face, "My Geng family still needs a few more money. Come up together and come back to my Geng family to collect it." The crowd also cheered and burst into laughter, with some saying, "It seems that the young master of the Geng family is really a good defaulter." Duan Yu looked contemptuously at Geng Li and wanted to leave again. Geng Li suddenly became angry, he couldn't tolerate being looked down upon by Duan Yu. "I have also obtained thousands of dollars from purchasing your cloth and grain stores. Now I am staking the property deed here to see if your liquor is just a name for nothing or as you said." Geng Li returned to his seat and knelt down again, but when he saw that no one from the Duan family had served alcohol, he became angry and said, "Duan Erlang, what do you mean?" Everyone also looked at Duan Yu in confusion. "What's wrong with these two young men? They have already given you all the shops." Duan Yu slowly turned around, his eyes full of disdain, and then said slowly, "I said this wine is not suitable for those who have a broad mind. If you drink too much, it will cause trouble. I have already told you this is powerful. If you want to drink too much, I have a life and death situation. Don't come to me in case of any trouble." Geng Li looked at Duan Yu's repeated obstacles and was still puzzled, but when Duan Yu presented his life and death statement, he suddenly burst into laughter. Duan Erlang, I said you kept blocking me, and I thought your liquor was really as strong as you said. Now I know, you're just afraid of getting a lottery ticket. I'll tell you, I've made up my mind today, and I'll just take the lottery ticket from your Hero's Tears." Geng Li took over Duan Yu's life and death statement, wrote his name directly on it, and then held his head high, "I haven't drunk yet." Qing Gongying kept suppressing his hatred as soon as he saw Geng Li, but he just silently watched the conversation between Duan Yu and Geng Li, suddenly showing a sudden smile. The onlookers cheered loudly, and Duan Yu nodded. The servants immediately brought 3 jars of high spirits and placed wine bowls in front of Geng Li. Geng Li opened the wine jar, and the aroma of the strong liquor immediately permeated the entire tavern. Everyone couldn't help but swallow their saliva, truly worthy of 1,000 gold jars. Geng Li couldn't help but be intoxicated by the fine wine, and everyone couldn't help but feel anxious, wishing to drink it for him. Geng Li poured a bowl and saw that the wine was crystal clear without any turbidity. Everyone stretched their heads to look. He picked up his bowl and drank the wine in one gulp, only to see his pale face turn red and his whole body seem to be burning. Geng Li's body, which had been drained by alcohol and lust, seemed to be filled with a force that was even more comfortable than absorbing 5 food powder. He seems to be in the clouds, and this wine is worth the value of 1,000 gold treasures. Geng Li poured another bowl and then drank it all in one gulp, shouting loudly in his mouth, "Good wine." When he drank the 3rd bowl, he couldn't help but shout, "This is immortal wine." The elder brother of the girl with black mole couldn't help but swallow his saliva as he watched Geng Li drinking heavily. The girl looked at her elder brother disdainfully and asked in a crisp voice, Second brother, look at your unremarkable appearance, as for what? His older brother immediately felt embarrassed and continued to explain with a smile. Little sister, this wine truly deserves to be of high quality. The aroma of the wine is so strong, and the water is so crystal clear. Duan's Erlang didn't say anything crazy, if I didn't exchange 1,000 coins. At this moment, Geng Lai's eyes were already blurred, and you couldn't help but loudly praise him. I truly live up to the heroic spirit of General Jianwei. Now our Duan family has prepared thousands of gold, only waiting for Brother Geng to come and collect it. The onlookers all cheered and shouted, Geng Lang is mighty, Duan Lang is heroic. Chapter 6. Home Deck Collection. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Under the congratulations of everyone, Geng Lai drifted away. He had been the protagonist for so many years, and his brilliance was overshadowed by his own younger brother. Geng Lai was extremely passionate, and he picked up the wine jar and poured it into his mouth. Duan Yu couldn't help but grit his teeth as he looked at it. This jar of strong liquor, which is over 70 degrees Celsius, weighs 5 pounds no matter what. The older brother of the young girl saw the constantly splashing wine and felt heartbroken. When Geng Lai finished drinking a jar, his whole body was like in the fire, his whole body was like a cloud, and the cheers of the crowd were no longer audible. The depression that Geng Lai had been suppressed by his younger brother over the years now flooded in. He really wants to cry. I have been bleeding and sweating for the Geng family for so many years, who can understand? Geng Lai opened another jar of strong liquor and then turned his head to drink it fiercely. When the entire jar of strong liquor was finished, he cried loudly and shouted loudly. What a hero's tears, this is not lonely coldness, this is ambitious ambition. When Geng Lai shook open the third altar, the entire hall fell silent. Everyone didn't expect that the son of such a notorious wealthy family would burst into tears. Isn't his heart already dead? What a hero's tears, evoking the pride of the past in the cold heart. The strong liquor in his throat had already made Geng Lai lose his previous arrogance, and his gentle gaze made it difficult for people to see the once wicked young man. Geng Lai ultimately did not finish his third jar of wine. He poured directly onto the ground, and the wine jar shattered as he fell. Qing Gongying looked at him coldly, suddenly showing a cold smile. The members of the Geng family quickly took him away, leaving behind the money and land deed. Everyone looked at Geng Lai's boldness and was immediately hooked by the wine bug. They all wanted wine and vegetables, but didn't care about the price that made people feel numb. The young girl's elder brother really wanted to endure the pain and order a heroic tear, but when he thought about it, that precious altar also withered. I can only order a jar of burning knives to express my feelings. But when he drank the burning knife, his spirit immediately perked up, what a good wine. But when I think about it again, the hero couldn't drink his tears and his mood was also a bit lackluster. The next day, Duan Yu arranged for someone to collect the shops of the Geng family, but was kicked out by the Geng family. Duan Yu and his people went directly to the Geng family to collect the money, only to find the whole family dressed in linen and filial piety. Geng Zhong, the young master of the Geng family, angrily rebuked Duan Yu, Duan Yu, what do you want? My elder brother has already been killed by you, and you still have the courage to come to my Geng family to cause trouble. Duan Yu pretended to be surprised and looked at Geng Zhong, then said loudly, Geng Zhong, don't slander me for my innocence. I, Duan Yu, always act honestly. When will I do what you say is dirty? The members of the Geng family immediately became angry, and Geng Zhong slowly drew his long sword. The servants immediately took out weapons and surrounded Duan Yu. Duan Yu looked at them calmly and said, it's only natural for you to repay your debt. If you draw your sword on me now, I'll make you wait until you can't retrieve this long sword. As the swords and crossbows drew on this side, a fierce middle-aged man walked out of the gate of the Geng family. Duan Yu saw that it was Geng Bai, the head of the Geng family. Duan Yu immediately bowed to Geng Bai, then raised his head and said, Today, I, Duan Yu, came to the Geng family to collect the accounts, but I didn't know that the Geng family had done such a despicable thing. Is this what Marquis Geng will do after that? Aren't you afraid that our ancestors will be ashamed? Geng Zhongli was furious and looked at Duan Yu with resentment. If his gaze could kill, Duan Yu would have died countless times. Duan Yu, if you plan to kill my brother and dare to slander my Geng family, is my sword not good? After Geng Zhong finished speaking, he wanted to use his sword and fight against Duan Yu, but was stopped by Geng Bai. Geng Bai immediately stopped Geng Zhong and scolded him immediately. Take back your sword immediately, don't let outsiders see my Geng family laughing. After Geng Zhong and others collected the weapons, they smiled and looked at Duan Yu. But in that eye, there was no trace of a smile, it was just cold. Duan's Erlang, that's a good trick. Don't worry, I can't give out the few shops that my Geng family is not yet in trouble. You can take someone directly to take over those 2 shops. Duan Yu immediately bowed to Geng Bai and then bid farewell. Geng Zhong looked at Duan Yu's domineering appearance, and if it weren't for his father stopping him, he really wanted to kill him with one sword. That sinister gaze kept staring at Duan Yu as he left. Watching Duan Yu leave, Geng Bai sighed deeply. Unfortunately, my family's door was blocked by a vertical pole. It seems that we can't just rely on reputation to survive. It's time for us to enter politics. At this moment, the entire Longxian county was spread, and Geng Lai died from drinking too much hero tears, while Duan Yu blocked the door and demanded payment. Everyone couldn't help but take a cold breath, but this section of you is still so strong. No one could have imagined that Duan Erlang, who had always been weak, would retaliate so fiercely. They all advised their own children not to provoke Duan Yu. Duan Gong heard about Duan Yu's methods and felt very pleased. His son finally learned how to wield a knife. In this world of the jungle, having compassion is right, but without killing intent, one cannot stand firm. Duan Gong immediately called Tian Yen over and patted his shoulder, whispering softly. Gong Qi, Tian Yan's character, fabricated, please pay attention to the reactions of various families. If the family's children have a bad relationship with Erlang, you don't need to take action. If the elders of each family don't want face and bully my young son, then let them know whether my Duan Yong's sword is still sharp. Tian Yen looked at Duan Gong in surprise. He also heard about Duan Yu's plan to eliminate Geng Lai, which was indeed brilliant. It's time to take action. These aristocratic families seem to have forgotten that the god of war in the Western Liang dynasty never shows mercy to enemies. Tian Yen immediately nodded and wanted to leave, but was stopped by Duke Duan. Your kid's name is Tian Yu, let him work under Erlang's command. We're all getting old, so we should cultivate our children. Tian Yen has also been decadent in the past 2 years. Since losing to Xianbei, he has been demoted to a commoner by the court. Tian Yen was recruited by Duke Duan as a staff member to handle some affairs in Liangzhou. Tian Yen nodded, and when he thought of his own kid, his serious face also showed a smile. I didn't expect Erlang to grow a lot, he's not as mischievous as before. I'll ask Yuer to follow Erlang and study hard. He always works behind closed doors and doesn't make any progress. The 2 of them were chatting, and Duan Gong instructed his servants to prepare food and drink. Drinking the hero's tears, he felt instantly relieved. Since Duan Jiasher grinded more and more wheat bran remained. Duan Yu began to guide winemakers to mix wheat bran with other grains for brewing. While Duan Yu was busy, a servant came to report that a young man named Tian Yu came to see him. Upon hearing that it was Tian Yu, this was a hero that Liu Bei had missed out on. As someone who had made a name for himself in the 3 kingdoms, he finally had a talented talent to come. Upon hearing this, Duan Yu was overjoyed and immediately went out to welcome Tian Yu. Tian Yu originally wanted to bow to Duan Yu, but he was immediately grabbed by Duan Yu's arm. Alright, do we still need this courtesy, brothers? Tian Yu looked at Duan Yu in surprise and obediently followed him into the mansion. Then Duan Yu introduced the Duan family's mill and brewing to Tian Yu, and Tian Yu's eyes were bright. At noon, he shouted for Qin Gongying and Hu Chair to accompany him, and they ate and drank together with Tian Yu. The few of them chatted happily. After all, they are all youthful in nature. At first, there was some respect, but later they all let go, and soon everyone became familiar with them. Later, Duan Yu drew over 100 elite soldiers from the refugees and specifically assigned Tian Yu to be responsible for training. Tian Yu was immediately overjoyed, training the soldiers with enthusiasm every day. Duan Yu also asked Qin Gongying to extract clever children from these refugees and teach them to read together with the children in the tavern. I also arranged several confidants for Qin Gongying to pay attention to the butler. Duan Yu has been busy here, but since Geng Lai's death, everyone in the Geng family has been gritting their teeth towards the Duan family. Geng Bai's father and son began to discuss in secret how to cause trouble for the Duan family, letting them know that their blood will not be shed in vain. Chapter 7. Geng Family Design. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the secret room of the Geng family, the father and son of the Geng family whispered privately. Geng Bai, who always smiles in front of others, has a cold and unusually cold expression, and his small, watery eyes emit a cold chill. Geng Zhong has been constantly inquiring about the situation of the Duan family recently, but the more he knows, the greater his hatred in his heart. Nowadays, the Duan family's refugees make flour, and thousands of refugees easily make them digest it. The Duan family's tavern's business is also getting better and better. Previously, Duan Ting was only stronger than the military, and his wealth had to rely on us. Now, he can pacify the refugees on his own, and he has even more surplus wealth. Geng Bai listened coldly to his son's complaint, and suddenly his eyes lit up and a cold smile appeared on his face. Secretly arrange people, saying that Longxian County has countless wealth and grains, and Governor Duan loves the people like a child, and will arrange everything properly. Upon hearing this, Geng Zhongchu was completely confused. Take a closer look, and your face also shows a happy expression. Within a few days, rumors spread throughout Liangzhou that Governor Duan loved the people like a son and there would be a way to survive as long as he arrived in Longxian. More and more refugees seem to see hope, all pouring into Longxian. There are tens of thousands of refugees gathering outside the city, and more hungry people are rushing towards Longxian. In previous years, when encountering such situations, people would ask for some food and aid from various ethnic groups to help refugees. But this year, all ethnic groups are shouting about the drought and lack of harvest, with no surplus food at home and unable to rescue refugees. Duan Gong is indeed capable of leading troops in combat, and he himself is not good at political affairs. Liangzhou itself is a bitter and cold place, and besides, it has been dry and rainy this year. Nowadays, tens of thousands of refugees are staying outside the city of Ji, and Duke Duan is also quite worried. He wants to draw some money and food from his own family, but although his own tavern makes money, there are also thousands of refugees who are also nervous. Duke Duan thought that his son could make this tavern a success and support thousands of refugees. Well, it's time for the child to do something serious. Tian Yen next to him introduced the situation to Duke Duan. Duke Duan, who was still frowning, had a smile on his face. Tian Yen couldn't help but smile bitterly as he saw Duan Gong sending someone to find Duan Yu. I said, brother, you're not just fooling around. He knows how to run a business and it is said that he has also raised thousands of refugees. But now there are tens of thousands of people, even if all ethnic groups donate food, they may not necessarily resettle these people. He is just a kid, does he still have the talent of Fan Li? But when Duan Yu came in and bowed to him and Duan Gong, he saw Duan Gong speaking with a stern face. Erlang, my father has noticed that you have been pragmatic lately and has decided to add more burden to you. Please find a way to resettle the refugees outside the city. Tian Yen tried to cover his face when he heard this, but neither of us could solve the problem. Why are you making things difficult for the child? He was just about to persuade Duke Duan, and the two of them came up with a solution. Duan Yu also began to complain, but he saw a hint of excitement in Duan Yu's eyes and it flashed away. Tian Yen patiently watched the communication between the two father and son. Ah Wang, it's already difficult enough for me to deal with these thousands of refugees. Isn't it a bit too many of these tens of thousands of refugees? Duan Gong's face turned stern and he said, many. It's just a small scene when one pacified the Chang rebellion. What is it? Tian Yen almost didn't laugh, but he didn't expect his older brother to use words to pressure his son. Duan Yu is very helpless. Who wants his father, but he still needs to fight for something. My father asked me to pacify these refugees, but you have to meet a few of my conditions. Upon hearing this, Duke Duan immediately smiled and said to Tian Yen. Gongqi, look at the children nowadays. They beg for things when they do something, they are all spoiled. Tian Yen just followed with a smile and didn't speak. You're already enough, you can't solve it on your own, push it to the child. The child asked for something, and you said with a shy face. I suspect now, is this your seed? Duan Gong looked at Tian Yen and didn't take over. His son just lowered his head and didn't speak, so he could only say in embarrassment. You can tell me, as long as it's not too excessive, I can satisfy you at my discretion. Upon hearing this, Duan Yu's eyes lit up and he suppressed his joy, grabbing Duan Gong's sleeve. I am short of people, give me thousands of elite soldiers. What if the refugees cause trouble? Also, my Gongjie cousin, Chu Yi's character, fabricated has been arranged for me. With just your ability, can you control thousands of elite soldiers? Can you control your cousin's arrogant temper? Let me give you 200 strong ones. Your cousin is looking at equipment. He is willing to come with you, but I won't stop him. Duan Yu felt secretly pleased, but his face remained unchanged, and he began to fight for conditions again. My father asked me to withdraw another 5,000 yuan from my family, and I will use it as the starting fund. Upon hearing this, Duke Duan immediately became angry. If I take out 5,000 gold coins, won't I arrange it myself? At most 1,000 gold coins, there's no extra one. Duan Yu saw that the old man was chopping a bit hard, so he could only say with a bitter face. Ah Wang, these are tens of thousands of refugees. I apologize for my son's helplessness. Duaning immediately looked at the young child in disappointment and then sighed deeply. Hey, I didn't expect that in my old age, Duan Yong would have no one to share his worries with. If Fan Zhizhang's hermit, helped Duan Yong break through Chang, were still here, how could he be so troubled? Tian Yen and Duan Yu both looked awkwardly at Duan Gong, and they immediately apologized to him. Duan Tsong was not moved by Duan Yu, and could only grit his teeth and say. At most, I'll leave you to take care of the Duan family's Wubao, nothing else. Duan Yu was a bit surprised. When did this father become so frugal? He quickly asked Duan Gong. Ah Wang, our Moonlight Wine Shop's income has exceeded 10,000 gold. You just take out your daughter, isn't it a bit excessive? Upon hearing this, Tian Yen chuckled inwardly, no wonder Duke Duan was looking for this young son. It turned out that he had the ability of Fan Li. Duan Gong immediately coughed awkwardly and said, don't you spend money on supporting thousands of refugees. Duan Yu didn't speak, just silently looked at his old father. Duan Gong could only helplessly say, in recent years, the court's finances have been tight, and our Liangzhou treasury has not had much. However, Wang saw that the soldiers were facing difficulties, so he distributed some money to them and let them have a good new year. Duan Yu looked at the old father helplessly. It was understandable that his father and his subordinates were leading troops to fight, but the governance of the area was not satisfactory. Duan Yu could only ask his father for a warrant. Who would have given him an old father who likes to be a scattered wealth boy? Duan Gong looked at his departing son and couldn't help but sigh. I hope Erlang can resolve this matter. Otherwise, Liangzhou will be in chaos again. Tian Yen looked at the tired Duke Duan and couldn't help but sigh. If the young Duke Duan dared not give money to these aristocratic families, he would dare to send troops to pacify them. Now that I am old, I am not as tough as before. I am truly a hero in my twilight years. Duan Yu asked Qin Gongying to go to various grain shops in Long County to discuss the exchange of refined noodles for wheat. Then he took Hu Chaer to the state warehouse to search for Zhu Yi. Just looking at Zhu Yi's body full of alcohol, still drinking inferior wine. Duan Yu frowned and then asked Hu Chaer to open the wine jar he brought. Zhu Yi immediately regained his energy, looked up at Duan Yu, and felt a sense of sadness in his heart. Throwing away the inferior wine in one's own hand, grabbing Hu Chaer's wine jar and pouring it into one's mouth. As soon as the wine entered my throat, I immediately felt like a knife cutting and my whole body was feverish. Zhu Yi regained his energy and lazily asked Duan Yu. Erlang, cousin, what's up? Duan Yu's face immediately changed and he deliberately spoke loudly. My elder brother has been punished by Yuman, and he is not as decadent as you are. Clean up, Maya Weng said to let you go back to work with me. Zhu Yi's face immediately changed and he quickly shook his head. I'm not leaving, I'll just stay here. I'm not wrong, why punish me? Duan Yu stared seriously at Zhu Yi, and his face showed even more disappointment. My mother cried and begged Weng for you to learn military service. You have learned to resist orders in so many years, haven't you? You should go back to the Zhu family now. I'll go back and tell my mother that my cousin Gongjie is no longer a Qilin from the Zhu family. Zhu Yi immediately panicked as he remembered that his parents had left early, both raised by his aunt Zhu Shi. Remembering his aunt's repeated expectations of him, he really didn't want to see her disappointed eyes. Duan Yu turned around and was about to leave when he was pulled by Zhu Yi, who showed a pleasing smile. That Erlang, cousin will come with you now. What does uncle want me to do with you? Duan Yu raised the corner of his mouth and his face became serious again. Draw out 200 elite cavalry for me, protect tens of thousands of refugees outside, and come back to the mansion to find me. After speaking, he threw the order directly to Zhu Yi. Upon hearing this, Zhu Yi's eyes lit up and he took the warrant with one hand. Chapter 8. Who is the hunter? You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Duan Yu returned to the Duan mansion and watched Tian Yu train his youth seriously, only to find that these people were still not in line and stood lazily. Duan Yu called Tian Yu to his side and explained his future military posture and formation training. Tian Yu immediately looked at Duan Yu in surprise as he listened, saying that this Erlang was a playboy. It seems that the rumors are not true. The two were still discussing how to train soldiers, and Qin Gongying came over to report to Duan Yu. It is said that everyone has gone and said that only the Jiang family has the highest bid, and only one stone is exchanged for one bucket. The other few are even more ruthless in price, exchanging one stone for 2 buckets. Duan Yu nodded and went directly to the Jiang family grain store with Qin Gongying. Enter the grain shop and have the servants directly call the person in charge. Duan Yu and his 3 companions waited for not long before the last black mole girl they met at a tavern walked over with her brother. Duan Yu and his brother bowed to each other. Everyone took their seats, and the young man began to introduce himself. I have the courtesy name, Zhong Yi, in my younger sister Jiang Ruer, and I am currently helping with my family's business. She also helps me with some household chores. Duan Yu seemed to have not heard what Jiang Rong said, just staring straight at Jiang Ruer. He noticed that the girl's black mole seemed to have shifted to the left. Looking at the lively eyes of the young girl, she felt a little unhappy, which made Duan Yu's heart seem to be grabbed. Everyone was puzzled by Duan Yu's impoliteness, as they saw him still staring at Jiang Ruer. Jiang Jiong's face was now filled with anger, and Jiang Ruer's eyebrows furrowed slightly. Qing Gongying felt a bit embarrassed and immediately coughed softly. Duan Yu just realized and quickly apologized. I'm impolite. Duan Yu immediately smiled and said, next, Duan Yu, I would like to make a bold visit today and would like to do business with your family. Jiang Jiong originally had a good impression of Duan Yu, but this meeting disappointed him a bit. I have already discussed this matter with your supervisor, and the price cannot be higher. The price is reasonable. I don't know how much your store can eat. I'm not afraid of Brother Zhang's joke. My father is planning to let me help the refugees outside the city. You don't have a good plan, so you can only exchange refined noodles for wheat to give the refugees a way to survive. Upon hearing this, Jiang Jiong's face showed respect and he bowed before saying anything. Duan Gongoi, if there is no drought this year, my Jiang family will also be willing to help refugees. However, my family also has children. However, how much refined noodles can the Duan family have? My Jiang family can exchange them. Upon hearing this, Duan Yu's face lit up with joy. Thank you very much for Brother Zhang's strong support. After speaking, Duan Yu immediately said goodbye and left. Before leaving, he smiled at Jiang Ruer. Jiang Jiong watched Duan Yu leave, then teased his sister. Little sister, how do I feel that Duan Yu likes you more? Do you think he doesn't dislike your appearance? Or did he see your disguise? Jiang Ruer's pretty face immediately turned red, and she smiled sweetly without saying anything. In the following days, Duan Yu directly exchanged and purchased 10,000 stones of wheat from the Jiang family, and also placed tens of thousands of refugees in Duan's Wubao. Still using the Duan family's strategy, first use a mortar to make noodles, and wait for the stones to come out before grinding the noodles. And Duan Yu asked Zhu Yi to draw 1,000 elite soldiers for training, and also incorporated the soldiers trained by Tian Yu into Zhu Yi's army, allowing Tian Yu to temporarily serve as Zhu Yi's deputy. The exchange of flour between the Duan and Jiang families was known to everyone, and everyone angrily criticized the Jiang family for being unfair. They agreed to target the Duan family together, but haven't you seen any money in the Jiang family? Then everyone secretly discussed with Duan Yu and wanted to exchange for refined noodles, but the Duan family refused. Some managers don't understand why the homeowner has to exchange refined noodles, so they ask the homeowner. We also learn to recruit refugees from the Duan family ourselves, making exquisite noodles that even need to be exchanged. The head of the household immediately became angry upon hearing this, and immediately rebuked the steward. A bucket of refined noodles with just one stone is not bad. You have to take care of the food, you have to take care of their age. Which one do you think is suitable? This family always takes it for granted, with a kind heart, and doesn't care how much money and food they have in their waists. And you, use your brain when doing things. You can't even figure out such a simple thing, how can you handle it? The steward was scolded and could only keep wiping the sweat off his forehead. As the number of stone mills in the Duan family increased, Duan Yu began to harvest wheat on a large scale, but what angered everyone was that Duan Yu still only exchanged with the Jiang family. As Duan Yu and the Jiang family exchanged more flour, the Geng family finally couldn't help it. They secretly contacted the butler of the Duan family and exchanged a batch of flour every day. Whenever a batch of refined noodles arrived, Geng Zhong's smile increased a bit, and his expression became even more proud. Duan Yu, I'll let you know, 1,000 defenses, 10,000 defenses, it's hard to guard against thieves. And all of this has already been discovered by the children arranged by Qing Gongying, but Duan Yu asked Qing Gongying not to speak up in a hurry. Send someone to keep an eye on the butler and other confidants, to see where the money and food they exchanged are stored. Duan Yu transferred all the mills of the Duan family to Wubao, stored a large amount of flour in the mansion, and exchanged it with the Jiang family daily. In less than a month, craftsmen have produced thousands of stone mills, and the Duan family can also produce tens of thousands of stone precision noodles per day. A large amount of refined noodles were stored in the mansion, and the butler became increasingly bold, giving thousands of dough of refined noodles to the Geng family every day. With the continuous absorption of refugees by the Duan family, and the increasing number of refugees coming to Xiliang, the Duan family has shown a refusal to accept anyone. Everyone is waiting for a day when the Duan family can't hold on, and they don't believe that the Duan family can keep losing money. Today, Duan Yu went to the Jiang family grain shop. Before he even started, Jiang Zhong and Jiang Ruer went out to welcome him. "Young man, quickly enter the room. You said you'll come right away, what else are you bringing?" If it weren't for Brother Zhang's help, these refugees wouldn't have been easy to settle down, and it wouldn't be nice to come empty-handed. A few people walked into the living room of the Jiang family, chatting and laughing, and Hu Chair immediately shed tears of heroism. Jiang Zhong's face was overjoyed, and this moment was just a sign of grandeur. Duan Yu saw this beautiful woman with agile eyes again, her pitch-black eyes seemed to make people fall into it. Just realizing that the location of the mole had not changed this time, I sighed inwardly, the girl with such delicate thoughts. Jiang Zhong frowned again and said, "Are you treating me like a dead person? Didn't you see her brother right next to her? Are you so reckless? Isn't it just a jar of wine?" "I, Jiang Zhong, don't care about this little thing in the cup." He looked a bit conflicted, but gritted his teeth and said, "I don't know why the wise brother came this time. What's the point?" Duan Yuxian greeted Jiang Ruer with a smile before replying with a smile. "The quantity this time is quite large, I wonder if Brother Jiang can take it." Upon hearing that it was a business, not just a slap in the face of his sister, Jiang Zhong immediately became arrogant. "My dear brother, I look down on my elder brother. As much as there is, my Jiang family will eat as much." Duan Yu chuckled and said, 10,000 stones of refined noodles. A mere 100,000 stones, what a big deal could it be? Jiang Ruer next to her immediately signaled to her brother, and Jiang Zhong immediately changed her color and her voice trembled slightly. "My wise brother said it's 100,000 stones of refined noodles." Duan Yu nodded. Jiang Zhong took a cold breath, "This is millions of wheat." The Jiang family has exchanged 400,000 stones of wheat with the Duan family, and another 1 million stones of wheat. This inventory is also under pressure. Although the quantity is large, there is profit here, so we can still take a chance. Don't worry, my dear brother. We can still find a way to get the wheat. Duan Yu couldn't help but smile as he saw Jiang Zhong feeling a bit forced. If it's really difficult for Big Brother to do, you can exchange some corn and coarse cloth, and I can accept it too. Upon hearing this, Jiang Zhong couldn't help but feel a smile on his face. If he didn't exchange all the wheat, it would be easy to handle. That's simple, I won't let my wise brother suffer. Duan Yu walked away with a smile on his face, but Jiang Ruer on this side fell into contemplation. Seeing his brother's happy expression, he always felt that this matter wouldn't be so simple. When she saw the jar of liquor that Duan Yu gave to her brother, her eyes couldn't help but brighten and she quickly called out to Jiang Zhong. "Second brother, Duan Yu is reminding you not to be superficial. He is designing the Mogeng family." Jiang Zhong looked at her little sister in confusion, and Jiang Ruer quickly explained. "Second brother, if the Duan family has a weapon that can produce about 1 stone of refined noodles with just 1 stone of wheat, what do you think the consequences would be?" Jiang Zhong thought it was impossible, but if it was true, he couldn't help but take a cold breath. "If, as I said, the price of refined noodles will plummet by then. There are really such sharp weapons in the world, and if there are, how can we say that we should seek the Geng family?" Jiang Ruer didn't answer second brother's question but directly asked in reverse. "How did Geng Li die?" "Excessive drinking." After Jiang Zhong finished speaking, he suddenly realized. What a Duan Erlang, such a profound strategy. If it weren't for my younger sister's reminder, our Jiang family would also suffer heavy losses. No, I only found out after Duan Erlang reminded me. After speaking, Jiang Ruer's face showed joy, but her eyes were filled with admiration. Jiang Jiong didn't pay attention to the little girl's expression, just had a bitter face and couldn't help but complain. I'm not in the mood to drink this hero's tears, which caused trouble for Erlang this time. Chapter 9 begins to close the network. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the following days, the Jiang family began to privately exchange refined noodles with other families, earning some profit from it. The appetite of the Geng and Duan family butlers is growing, and now they have exchanged over 20,000 stones of refined noodles. Duan Yu wants to start collecting the net. Just that night, Qing Gongying said that the watchman noticed that the butler had dropped something into the water well of the Duan family. Duan Yu knew that the butler finally couldn't resist. In the middle of the night, Duan Yu summoned Zhu Yi and caught the butler and all those involved in reselling the refined noodles of the Duan family. The butler still wanted to resist, but when he saw Duan Yu, he knew everything was settled. Upon hearing the commotion outside, Duke Duan hurried over and was surprised to see that Duan Yu had already caught the butler in his confidence. What's going on? Duan Yu's face turned cold as he respectfully answered his father's question. Sell Duan's refined noodles and poison them into a well. Duan Gong looked disappointed at the butler, but calmly asked him. Do you want to say something to me? My lord asked me to care for the living, and I did it. I knew I was going to die, so I found a way to make some money for my 2 daughters. The butler's originally lonely expression suddenly turned ferocious, and he looked at Duan Yu with malice. But it's this playboy who killed my nephew and made me settle down in the future. I don't want to seek revenge, but I can't do it. When I saw his daily haughty demeanor, my heart was cut open like a knife. Duan Gong looked at his subordinates helplessly, following him for decades, and he gave him a chance. Just as Duke Duan was preparing to have his subordinates execute the butler, he was stopped by Duan Yu. Duan Gong looked at his young son in confusion, and Duan Yu quickly stepped forward to explain to Duan Gong in a low voice. Duan Gong nodded and then left with a sigh. Duan Yu ordered Zhu Yi to execute all the butler's confidants, and those people all knelt down to beg for mercy upon hearing this. However, Duan Yu remained unmoved with a cold face. The butler was surprised to see that Duan Yu did not kill him, but then he still put on a stern expression. I just want to die quickly, don't put any effort into it. Duan Yu didn't care, just said softly. Your 2 daughters, who were recently married, were wiped out by the entire family. Would you be willing to do the same? Everyone couldn't help but feel cold all over, and the butler looked at Duan Yu with a stern expression. Duan Yu, if the disaster is not within your family's reach, you are not afraid of retribution. Duan Yu only smiled slightly in the face of the butler's roar. It depends on your performance. Maybe I forgot about it when I was happy. The butler listened to Heir Xiao's casual words and controlled the lives of his family, just like manipulating ants. He knelt down dejectedly, truly regretful. Why did he provoke this evil star and make it so? He still gave in, he knew it was really difficult to survive in this era. I am already old and decayed, but my daughter, who has only recently married, really let them bury her. He didn't know if Duan Yu would spare his daughters a way out, but he could only choose to believe it. In the following days, the butler contacted the Geng family, and the refined noodles of the Duan family kept exchanging with the Geng family. At first, the Geng family could still exchange copper coins, but in the end, they could only grit their teeth and exchange grain and cloth. The exchanged refined noodles have exceeded 200,000 stones, and the Geng family can't bear it anymore. He couldn't figure out why the Duan family had so much fresh noodles, always thinking that he was almost finished with their noodles. Just as they were about to give up, the butler of the Duan family sent someone to deliver the message. This is the last inventory of the Duan family. After finishing this batch, he will leave the Duan family. There is a quantity, but there are 100,000 stones of refined surface. The Geng family hesitated for a moment, but when they thought about the low cost of the refined noodles in their hands, they could at least double the price when transported to the Luoyang area, and the Duan family would also be greatly weakened in this situation. Geng Bai directly agreed and ate this batch of refined noodles. His fierce eyes looked into the distance, and he wanted Duan Gong to know that my Geng family does things differently from your martial artists. After the Geng family successfully completed the transaction with the butler, they all breathed a sigh of relief as they waited for the Duan family to fall through. At this time, Duan Yu had already transported all the money and food traded by the butler back to the Duan family. He gave the butler and his 2 daughters some money and food. Immediately, with a cold face, he said, "Hurry up and leave. Even if I let you go, the Geng family won't spare you. You should understand." The butler looked at Duan Yu in surprise, unable to believe that the decisive second young master would let him go. And Duan Yu's subordinates also looked at him in surprise, only to see Duan Yu wave his hand calmly. He doesn't want to kill indiscriminately, as long as he doesn't hinder his path, why go see that bloody scene? The butler watched as Duan Yu left and knelt down to kowtow to him. His eyes were filled with tears, and he regretted being blind. Such a hero, yet determined to be his enemy. A few days after trading refined noodles with the Geng family, various butlers gathered at the entrance of the Duan family grain store. I saw Duan Yu walking out of the door and asking the servants to take out a sign and place it at the entrance of the grain shop. Upon seeing this, the steward couldn't help but curse one after another. "Your stone of wheat can be exchanged for 5 dough of refined noodles, is that true? Zhang's family, his heart is too dark. He actually traded us less than a bushel and earned all this money. Isn't it heartbreaking?" The Geng family exchanged even less, and the word "greed" should be engraved on their face. The families who traded from the Jiang family couldn't help but curse one after another, and the Geng family's face turned pale. Various families flocked to the Duan family, and the Duan family refused to accept anyone. As the exchange rate increased, various companies became afraid and stopped acquiring. And the Duan family has been lowering prices all the way, almost making 1 stone of refined noodles to exchange for 1 stone of wheat. Then Duan Yu asked Qing Dongying to leave a message in Longxian that refined noodles are not easy to store and are not as durable as wheat, which can only be stored for a few months. Families in Longxian who exchange refined noodles are panicking and constantly vomiting blood to sell refined noodles. Ladies and gentlemen, my Zhang family's refined noodles are cheaper. You only need 1 stone of refined noodles to exchange for 3 stones of wheat. Our Li family exchanges 1 stone of refined noodles for 2 stones of wheat. They all have no conscience. We give back to our new and old customers by exchanging 1 stone of wheat. No matter how attractive the shouting sounds are, no one dares to exchange anymore, and even unwilling to buy. When the value of an item is high, everyone goes to grab it. When the value plummets, even the best things are ignored. Geng Bai's family looked at Monsang Jingmian with a worried expression on their faces, as they watched the servants eating noodles and cakes made from Jingmian every day. Geng Bai's heart was shattered. Geng Zhong was eating the noodles handed over by his servant, still looking at his father with a worried expression on his face. "Ah Wang, what do you think we should do?" Geng Bai squinted his eyes and took a hard bite of the hu bing. "What should I do? Let the steward find a way to sell them to me. If they can't sell them, feed them all to my dog." The servants couldn't help but feel cold all over as they listened to these 2 gentlemen talking, and each steward hurriedly wiped the sweat off their foreheads. Every grain shop saw their refined noodles being sold at a low price, feeling heartbroken. Their ferocious appearance scared away many customers. But Duan Yu quietly arranged for Dongying to secretly take away these refined faces. It was only when each household realized that their refined noodles were not much left that they realized it. When I wanted to go to the Duan family to exchange for refined noodles again, I found that the shameless Duan family had raised the price and restored it to 1 stone of wheat for 5 dough of refined noodles. Geng Zhong heard that the price of noodles had increased, and immediately excitedly reported to his father, but when the two of them happily went to the grain shop, the steward immediately welcomed the homeowner in and reported happily. "Master, great joy, great joy." Geng Bai also regained his smile, patted the steward's shoulder, and then asked softly. "Asai, what kind of happy event is it? Our 400,000 yuan refined noodles have all been sold out in the past few days, so my lord doesn't have to worry about this matter anymore." After the steward finished speaking, he looked respectful and was waiting for the master's praise. Upon hearing this, the father and son of Kuginbi's expressions changed, and the smile on their faces just now became even more ferocious. Geng Bai drew his sword directly and stabbed the steward's body. The steward looked at Geng Bai incredulously, and Geng Bai drew his long sword, constantly chopping at him while cursing. "Dog thing, fool, idiot, feeding you to the dog, I'm afraid the dog will become stupid if it eats it." Geng Zhong stared blankly at his father, wondering when he was so violent. The servants were also stunned, each at a loss. After Geng Bai was tired from chopping, he threw his long sword to the ground and his face regained a smile. But this smile made the servants feel even colder. "Feed me this dog thing." Under the despicable command, the servants were all stunned, which made the smile disappear again. Geng Zhong looked at the bewildered servants and asked weakly. "That Wang, didn't you say that if a dog eats him, it will become stupid? Do we still feed the dog?" Geng Bai slapped his son directly, feeling a bit angry and not arguing. "Will you kill that stupid dog again? Do you still need to ask me about this?" Chapter 10. Successors of the Duan family. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The whole Yangzhou is selling premium noodles, and each one is also greeting Duan Yu. Seeing their own money in food unknowingly decrease, it made them all feel like knives and knives. They not only hate Duan Yu, but also grit their teeth at the Jiang and Geng families. These two families are also accomplices. If they hadn't been desperately buying noodles, we would have followed the trend. Geng Bai's hatred towards killing and killing dogs left Jiang Ji with no choice but to drink strong liquor and drown his sorrows. This year, the Duan family has been living happily, constantly slaughtering pigs and sheep and celebrating non-stop. Duan Gong, who always had a cold face, was now melted by the excitement, and a smile appeared on his face. Over the years, he has been somewhat disheveled by these aristocratic families who have been deceiving him. But in these few months, families in Liangzhou have experienced it for the first time, and their son's hand flipping is a method of covering the clouds and hands with rain. Not only were 60,000 to 70,000 refugees properly resettled, but all their wealth was looted by the Duan family. He couldn't be unhappy just to vent his anger. Duan Gong called Duan Yu to his side and then loudly introduced him to the guests. "This is Duan Yu, the young son of the old man. Everyone should also get to know him. In Liangzhou, if anyone dares to bully him, it's digging my roots." As soon as Duke Duan finished speaking, the guests below immediately agreed. "General, in the territory of Liangzhou, who dares to provoke Erlang? The next day at the end of the day, he will lead his troops and destroy them." "Humph, only you, Fan Silk, have the ability. No one in the entire western Liang knows the general's tiger power. Who dares to provoke him? Let's go see the Jingguan on Jisher Mountain first." "That's right, in Liangzhou, as long as the second young master reports the name of the Duan family, I don't believe anyone dares to provoke me." Upon seeing that the guests below were all burly men, Duan Yu finally understood why his father had been in such a predicament for so many years. Duan Gong waved his hand and the guests below immediately stopped discussing. "I've told you many times, don't call me general anymore. You are all captains now, and you should read more books. You can't just be brave enough." These 5 big and 3 rough men immediately stopped talking, and each one was extremely embarrassed. Duan Gong felt a bit helpless. He knew these people. Let them lead the troops in battle, no problem. It's even harder to make them read than to kill them. I am already old, and I don't know how long I can protect them. He couldn't help but look at his son, kneeling there with a calm expression on his face, without feeling complacent about these achievements. I ignored him and thought he was just a cowardly boy, but unexpectedly, he had a strategic mind. Duan Gong's face showed a smile again, and he immediately waved his hand and asked the servants to bring the fine wine. When the fine wine was served on the table, all the guests knelt in front and sat quietly there. Drink freely. As soon as Duan Gong finished speaking, the lobby immediately became lively. The men opened the wine jar and poured it into their mouths. One by one, their faces turned red, their eyes lit up with semen, and they then poured it into their mouths. Duan Yu looked down at the excitement below and admired his father even more. Nowadays, Duke Duan is no longer a general, but his subordinates are all captains. However, in front of Duke Duan, they are still ordered and prohibited. After the banquet ended, Duan Yu stumbled back to his doorstep and saw Chen Gongying waiting there. While Duan Yu was still puzzled, Chen Gongying suddenly knelt down to Duan Yu and saluted him. I, Lord Qinggong, am willing to do whatever it takes to make the Lord suffer. Duan Yu was momentarily stunned, and then he was overjoyed. He quickly helped Chen Gongying up. Ying, do you know? I've been waiting for you to recognize me as the master for a long time. Duan Yu spoke while patting Chen Gongying's shoulder. This is my first strategist and also my first team. My name is Chen Gongying, my courtesy name is Renjie. I was originally a family of poetry and etiquette, but during the Chang Rebellion, my family was killed, and I was the only one protected by guards to survive alone. After the Chang Rebellion was quelled, and when I returned home, all my property was embezzled by the Geng family. I was escorted to argue, but was severely injured and killed by the evil slaves of the Geng family. I later attached myself to the Duan family to seek revenge, but it was never taken seriously. I was already disheartened and wanted to venture elsewhere. The appearance of Lord Ku not only punishes the Geng family, but also saves tens of thousands of starving people. I hope that Lord Ku can always have a benevolent heart and work together with him to help the suffering people below. Duan Yu couldn't help but sigh as he listened to Chen Gongying's confession, and he couldn't help but say, Renjie, we can only survive in this chaotic world now. The world is going to be chaotic. Chen Gongying looked at Duan Yu in confusion and then began to ponder. Those young children have already learned to read and become enlightened. You can find some key spiritual virtues to cultivate from them. Chen Gongying nodded, feeling the turmoil in the world and the almost annihilation of poetry and book houses like himself. Those ordinary people's lives are even more precarious. The next morning, Duan Yu returned to Wubao and only then did he dare to burst out laughing recklessly. I didn't expect the handling of goods during the Han Dynasty to be so comfortable. Looking at the pile of money and food in my warehouse, I am extremely satisfied. In the following days, he was finally able to unload the burden and take care of everything. I started researching making various equipment with craftsmen myself, and whenever I had free time, I would study food. Chen Gongying watched Duan Youxian's life and couldn't help but advise. Number 34, my lord, when the sun rises, it will shine, when the water is full, it will overflow. Nowadays, although the second young master has the upper hand, will each family really be willing to accept it? Duan Yu listened carefully and then casually said. Renjie, if you have anything to say, let's talk without going around the bush. Heir Shao has earned money and food from various families. These people dare not act openly and will inevitably resort to tactics secretly. I suspect they will unite with strong men to attack our Wubao. Upon hearing this, Duan Yu immediately broke out in a cold sweat, and he realized that this was the Han Dynasty, not modern times. Playing tricks to win others, the other party cannot suffer this hidden loss. The Yellow Turban Rebellion is about to break out, and it's normal for bandits to rob themselves. But then he thought to himself that his father was the god of war Duan Yong, the governor of Liangzhou. They really dared. Renjia, how dare they provoke my father's tiger power? Upon hearing this, Qin Gongying looked at Duan Yu, who had not yet reached the crown, and couldn't help but feel a sense. The protagonist is still young and unaware of the dangers of this society. Lord, even the prince, they dare to assassinate, not to mention that you are just the son of the governor. He immediately summoned Zhu Yi and the supervisor of Wubao, Duan Ming. Not long after, Chu Yi and the supervisor, Duan Ming, arrived. Duan Yu began to discuss this matter, but both of them didn't take it seriously after hearing it. After all, Duan Gong's name still works in Liangzhou. Duan Yu looked at the indifferent expressions of the two, but his heart was even more frightened. This TMD was black under the light. If it weren't for Qin Gongying's reminder, I wouldn't have thought of it myself, nor would my subordinates. Without any defense, if you are really targeted by the other party, the outcome goes without saying. Brother, immediately send someone to send me a message to Oing, saying that there may be strong people in Wubao. Oing will have his own opinion. Stop the grinding of the people in Wubao and organize defensive equipment. Cousin, you and you brother immediately go and draw another 1,000 young men, along with the trained soldiers, to assist in defending Wubao. They will also send scouts to explore the surrounding areas and secretly patrol them. Ying, you organize the remaining servants to prepare defense equipment. At the same time, prepare weapons to serve as reserves. Chu Yi and Duan Ming looked at Duan Yu's serious orders and intended to persuade him. Just think about Duan Yu's recent achievements, that's all. What if it's true? Duan Yu didn't know, but at this time, in the secret room of the Geng family, the father and son of the Geng family had already discussed the strategy. They knew that this time, they would definitely kill the hope of the Duan family and steal their money and food.